Right folks, Kent Richard from Coudenhove Kalergi here. Just after finishing up there, the Bodenstown Memorial to Wolftown, and apologies for my mistake saying 250th anniversary, should have been 225. With this gentleman who I got talking to very kindly, you might need your belt.
Oh yes.
No problem at all, otherwise the thing would be going bing, 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 you know. But to just do a little introduction, if I may, I met this gentleman who very kindly agreed to come and have a little bit of a cruise with the Count, and so we're going to drive. These are the back roads here that we came in off the Nace Road, but please tell us about your interest in Wolftown and Bodenstown.
Okay, well, I've read a lot about Wolftown through my lifetime. He's one of my great heroes.
Right.
I regard him as one of the greatest Irishmen who has ever lived. He had a fantastic mind. His intellect was absolutely incomparable. He was a fantastic statesman. He was a lawyer in his own right, and in many ways he was a genius, because he went to France in 1796 penniless,
Right.
and somehow managed to get Lazare Hoche,
Right.
who was one of Napoleon Bonaparte's right-hand men.
Did you meet Napoleon?
He actually met Napoleon,
Right.
and he somehow succeeded in getting them to organise an
Right.
expedition to Ireland.
I hope Ridley Scott includes that in his movie.
Well, he should do.
Yeah, just to throw that in. Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
So he managed to succeed in getting them to organise this expedition, which was a remarkable achievement in
Right.
itself. It demonstrates the fantastic charisma he must have had
Right, as a leader.
and he definitely had something. So this was a huge expedition which did come to Ireland under the leadership of Lazare Hoche.
Right,
Unfortunately, due to what I often describe as one of the what-ifs of Irish history,
an
ill wind forced them to not land, and they retreated and went back to France.
Right,
Now, undoubtedly, if they had landed in Ireland, the course of Irish history would have been changed.
How many ships were involved?
It was a huge fleet of up to 30 ships.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So obviously then that was deferred, and then the 1798 rebellion occurred 2 years later.
Right.
But it is an example of the outstanding genius that Wolftown had.
Right.
Great mind, great intellect, great statesman.
And was he actually in France during the time of the revolution?
No, because at the time of the revolution,
Yeah.
he founded the Society of the United Irishmen in 1791, which of
Gotcha.
course was founded along with William Drennan, Samuel Neilson, Thomas Russell,
Right.
up in Cave Hill in Belfast.
Right.
So the movement of the United Irishmen had been spawning and evolving throughout the 1790s.
Right.
So, as I say, he was an outstanding man. He's one of my great heroes.
Yeah.
His diary is most interesting reading.
Published? Or
Not officially published, but,
Right.
but it is obtainable to read. Then, of course, the circumstances of his death are most mysterious, to say the least. It was always depicted that he took his own life in prison, but there has been evidence to come out in recent years to suggest that he actually was murdered in jail.
Right.
And he was murdered by either by a soldier or by one of the soldiers who were manning the provost jail.
Right.
So I think that's most interesting. He didn't take his own life; he was actually murdered by the foe.
And did Edmund Burke have any part in the United Irishmen or anything like that?
Well, Edmund Burke, no, he would have. I mean, Edmund Burke was primarily a speaker in the House of Commons, and obviously he wrote the famous
Reflections on the Revolution in France.
which was a very fine book. So he was a good writer and all
I
that.
have an original copy.
Oh, very good.
Printed in 1793, 13th edition.
Wow.
I got it for my birthday because I like the idea of the social contract in society between the dead, the living, and the yet born. And it really touched me when I heard about that, how important it is that the obligations that we have not to be making rash decisions that are popular at the time that have consequences. You can see that ties in so perfectly with today, as in so many different levels we're being attacked
Okay.
You know, and
Well,
if I may, I regard what we went through is actually a psychological civil war, because it has divided families, and the consequences are still being felt. You know. But sorry to digress, but.
Well, of course, Edmund
yes.
Burke would have been very much influenced by the Jacobites in France,
Right.
and obviously the ideals of the French Revolution and
Right.
so forth, which is really where Wolfe Tone and the United Irishmen came from as well, because
Right.
the concepts of liberty, equality, fraternity
Right.
was the fundamental basis for the United Irishmen.
Right. Well, I was just going to make a joke, is that, yeah, aren't we lucky that we have a green, white and orange flag rather than a red, white and blue? Because so many countries in the world have a red, white and blue flag.
True.
You know, and I think,
Yes.
aren't they not based on those three tenets?
They would be.
Yes.
They would be. Of course, the tricolour was brought
Yes.
back from France in 1848 by
Right.
Thomas Francis Meagher.
Right.
Although personally speaking, it's not my favourite flag. I
What, the flag of the Republic?
much prefer, the flag which was taken to Tara and Ballinamuck
Right.
by the pikemen,
Okay.
which was with the green flag with the harp in the middle.
Right. How
So that is my
interesting.
preferred Irish flag.
Right.
I think it much more depicts, the we'll say the fundamental concepts of Ireland.
Right.
Not that I'm against the concept of the tricolour.
Yeah.
I just think it possibly has Masonic dimensions to
Right.
it. But we certainly digress there.
Yeah.
But
But and you were mentioned too as well about the other four gentlemen who were commemorated.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, of course, their anniversary will be coming up on the 8th of December.
Okay.
And that will be the 101st anniversary of their executions in Mountjoy Jail.
And one of them is Liam Mellows.
Well, you have Liam Mellows, you've
Yes.
got Rory O'Connor, Joe McKelvey and Dick Barrett, one
Right.
for each province of Ireland.
And they were chosen accordingly.
Well, they were chosen accordingly, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Well.
And of course, they were murdered, really, in my opinion,
Yeah.
through total vicious, vindictive spite.
Right.
Because they were murdered for the as a reprisal for the assassination of Sean Hales,
Right.
who was killed outside the Dáil in around July of 22.
Okay.
And he was killed by accident,
Right.
because the person they had intended killing was a member of the Irish Free State Army who was in his presence,
Right.
and he was killed by mistake.
Okay.
But out of vicious vitriol,
Yeah.
they captured the four men
Yeah.
and they held them in prison for a number of months,
Right.
and then ultimately executed them for no reason whatsoever.
Right.
No
But
justification for it.
But it's interesting, though, if I may, that there were, I think it was 46 Republicans were executed by the Free State soldiers, and yet there was 77 sorry, I beg your pardon, 46 Republicans executed by the British, and yet there was 77 executed by the Free State Army.
Yes.
Which is shocking. But actually what got me interested in the National Graves Association was the 100th anniversary of the laying of a wreath. There were teenagers, I think there were 3 teenagers that were executed. They were putting up anti-treaty posters up around Drumcondra, and they were caught. And to think that somebody gave a decision somewhere that it was okay to execute. I think one was 17 years old.
Yes.
I thought it was so sad that somewhere that somebody made a decision, and their bodies were dumped at the side of the road. And seemingly there was 140, to my knowledge, 140 people that suffered the same fate. We're driving into a blinding sunlight there, but 140 people suffered the same fate that were Republicans whose bodies were dumped. And this was an angle of the Civil War that I never knew about. And to me, I always thought that the war ended with the assassination of Collins, and I didn't realise that the ramifications went on a lot further, and including is the one regarding the Lamass monument up the mountains there. And I went up and did a little video on the anniversary of his assassination, but also the fact that somebody took it upon themselves the week before this commemoration. They poured red paint over it. So they basically desecrated his memorial. So the people involved with this, the National Graves Association, I think they went up themselves and cleaned it up to make it presentable, which I thought was a nice thing to do. But I suppose like, we're actually living through history, and it was interesting to note that the gentleman who was speaking there, Tim Horgan, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That he spoke about the empire, but we've swapped one imperialist empire for another,
Mm-hmm.
and we're now in a situation that we have to. It's the centralising of power between the UN, the World Economic Forum, and the World Health Organization. And I believe at the end of this month now, the World Health Organization is ratifying what will be known as pandemic treaties
Mm-hmm.
at the end of this month. So effectively then the Irish government then will come under the control of the World Health Organization. So if they decide to call them a pandemic, the Irish government have to do what the World Health Organization tells them to do, irrespective of the consequences of that, you know.
Which essentially could be the world government that we've often been
Yes.
talking about for years and
Yes.
years.
And it was interesting to note in that spoofery that was put up by RTE regarding the climate change last week, with that Manchurian of all candidates, the fella Mark Little. It mentions the New World Order.
All right.
You know, so I don't know if you got the chance to waste an hour and 10 minutes of your life watching it, but it was certainly garbage. You know, but that was all. So yeah, I totally agree. It seems to be the centralising of power. You know, I don't know how we get out of this, because I think the media has an awful lot to answer for, and the lack of debate. You know, which it's you know, we're in very worrying times, and you know, is it any wonder that people are so upset with RTE and what happened, and you know. But so that was there any other character there from you spoke of about the four fellows that were executed?
Yeah, well, I think the circumstances surrounding the execution are most vicious, we'll say,
Right.
or sinister.
Yeah.
First of all, they seem to have a lot of vitriol for Rory O'Connor.
Right.
So they literally riddled him. They pumped 50 bullets into him.
Wow.
So much so that they didn't really, I suppose, have enough bullets for Joe McKelvey.
Right.
Because Joe McKelvey was actually lying on the ground, still alive.
Right.
And he had to plead with the Irish Free State soldiers to finish him off. So they literally did finish him off, and he was on the ground. So that's particularly gruesome,
Right.
to say the least.
Right.
But I think in many ways it personifies the viciousness that was in the Irish Free State Army
Sure.
during the Civil War.
Yeah.
And they were Irishmen doing it to other
Sadly.
Irishmen, their former comrades,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's particularly repugnant from that point of view.
Yeah.
You know.
But I always liked Dan Green. I had his book, My Fight for Irish Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I found it a very interesting read.
Yes.
So I'm amazed that he was able to get over some of those walls with bullets in them.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, I often think the escape from Fernside is absolutely it's so dramatic. It's beyond belief, really.
Absolutely. You know. But,
And of course, Dan actually went to the US just before the Civil War broke out,
Right.
and because he wouldn't take any side.
Did he?
He wanted to remain neutral.
Okay.
He said he couldn't take. He was opposed to the treaty, but he couldn't take the anti-treaty side because it would mean going against his former comrades.
Okay.
So the only solution for him was to actually leave the country, which is what he did. He went to the US.
I never knew that now. You know.
So I think that says something for the character of the man, that he didn't actually want to take sides.
Yes, absolutely.
Not that I'm condemning Liam Lynch or any of the people who took the anti-treaty side. I totally understand. I mean, my own grandfather took the anti-treaty side, and he was the aide-de-camp of John McKelvey in the Four Courts in 22.
Hence the personal interest.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, but I think that's an interesting kind of angle on Dan Green, that he didn't actually take sides.
Sure. And you were just saying somewhere up around here, is that right? Where you need to get out, is that right?
Absolutely, yes. Just up here on the left-hand side of the corner. Okay.
Well, you're very kind. Listen, I'm very grateful for you taking the time to have a little chat with me and go cruising with the count.
Well, we are in the vicinity of John Devoy, so we're in good place. You know?
Excellent.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
It's wonderful.
Thanks for listening. Good afternoon, good luck, and God bless.